Well, it's interesting that between 13th and 17th centuries, in the state of Maharashtra, where I had the privilege to grow up as a youngster, there was a community which was blessed with several enlightened individuals who directed them to become good devotees, and many of them were part of the Varkari Samstha, became the Bhakta of Vithoba from Pandharpur. I could list as many as 40 people who can be recognized as such in the history books in that particular group of special individuals. And I'm certain in my mind that there are many more who did not get recorded in the history during the same period. Eknath was a prominent Marathi religious poet, and he spent his entire life helping the community. He lived for about 66 years, born in 1533 in Paitan, and passed away in 1599. It's interesting, he was born in the Deshastha Brahmin family. He was very well versed in Sanskrit, though he purposefully communicated with the community in Marathi, the local language, so that they could understand it. And even though the so-called scholars at that time always spoke in Sanskrit, and one may not know that not only was he not proficient in Sanskrit, but also he was outstanding scholar of Arabic, Persian, and Urdu and Hindi as well, besides Marathi. Eknath, if I can summarize in one line, he was a rare and a perfect yogi who blended the ideal life of a methodical and a self-disciplined householder with that of being a great poet and devotee, who succeeded in reaching a life of renunciation as a sansari, and he continued to serve every member of the society. The success was related to his amazing self-control and absolute love for God, but at the same time, even though disciplined as he was, he would not hesitate to drop his daily routine if somebody needed some help, some finances, some goods, or some kind of help, or even the name, to make certain that that person remains at peace and finds happiness. Let's talk about his life story first. He was born in Paitan, as I told you, on the second fortnight of Falgun, on the sixth day, in 1533. Now, it's interesting, he comes from a unique family. His grandfather was the famous Sant Bhanudas, whose son's name was Chakrapani. Chakrapani has a son whose name is Surya Narayan and was married to Rukmini Bai. These were the parents of Eknath. Unfortunately for Eknath, both of them passed away when he was very, very, very young. So he was brought up by his grandparents, who put him through the sacred thread ceremony at the age of 6. He learned from them Vedas, daily 3 times prayers, morning prayer, madhyasna, noon and the evening, and learn meditation as well as doing regular fasting on regular basis. It's interesting that in his house lived an old Pandita Shastriji, who would read him the stories from Puranas, and he found him to be a very bright and intelligent boy. And he completed the studies of Bhagavata Purana by the age of 12 years. Eknath was amazingly strict in maintaining the values, yamas and niyamas. This amazing individual. At the age of 12, he started feeling a little restless, and I felt that he needed some enlightened guru for his spiritual progress, which can go even further. As usual, he was at the temple that he always went, Shiva temple, quiet, peaceful in meditation. When he suddenly heard from the inner sanctum, that Shiva temple, if you go to Devgad, you'll find Janardhan Pant, the enlightened individual who will teach you. And the voice stopped. He got back home, shared what he heard at the temple with the Shastri who had taught him the Bhagavad Purana. And without telling the grandparents, the very next day he started walking towards Devgad, taking the name of Jai Hari Vithala, Jai Hari Vithala. And after 3 days, arrived in Devgad. Devgad, by the way, nowadays is known as Daulatabad. Now, Janardhan Swami was in charge of the big fortress in Devgad. The Janardhan Swami was special. He was very capable. He was independent. He was shrewd, a brilliant individual who had mastered the art of yoga and was a devoted follower of Sri Dattatreya. And he was in constant contact with Sri Dattatreya, whom we meet regularly during the meditations and samadhi. When Ek Nath arrived in Devgad, Janardhan Swami was in his prayer room. And as soon as he saw him, he did a typical Saštanga Namaskar that all of us know and held the feet of the Janardhan Swami in his hands and said, here are the feet of the one who will bless me, enable me to cross the ocean of samsara, the real feet of the real father and mother. And having said that, he was able to breathe with great relief and happiness, having reached his destination. As the young boy bowed down in reverence, Janardhan Swami picked him up very affectionately, like father would do. He was very pleased with the diligence, patience, determination, and purity on this innocent young boy's face. And he patted on his back like a father would do and then embraced him. And Ek Nath suddenly, immediately felt very much at peace and at home. Janardhan Swami asked, child, where have you come? From Paitan. Why did you walk from so far to come here? To see you, so that living under your roof, I may serve you. But what will you gain by serving me? I have full faith that serving you, I shall obtain your grace and indeed see God. Who do you have at home? Did you inform them about you coming here? My grandparents. But no, I did not tell them because they would not otherwise let me go. Janardhan Swami looked at him from top to bottom, smiled and accepted him and took him inside his house. He was still amazed as Ek Nath's intense desire to gain that knowledge at such a young age of only 12 years. And Ek Nath on his hand, he looked at Jagannath Swami as a guru, God incarnate, and continued to serve him faithfully for several few years, about 6 years in all. He did that with intense devotion. He made sure that he prepared the bath for the teacher, went to the garden, got the flowers for the puja, stood behind him when he was performing the puja, helped prepare the meals, and even massage his feet before the guru went to sleep. He was actually following what he had learned in Gita, where, if you remember, Shrikrishna said to Arjuna, Tadviddhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. That wisdom, that amazing wisdom, can be acquired, that means tattva, through the humble resignation and significant queries made respectfully at appropriate time and by rendering service to the enlightened individuals who have realized the truth. Jnaninas tattva darshana. They in turn will indeed impart wisdom unto you. Every Thursday, Janardhan Swami would fast because that was the Guruvar, that was the Datta Guru's special day, and then meditate at a secluded place. And because of his habit of fasting every Thursday, the Muslim leaders in charge of that fort, owners of that fort, declared Thursday as the official holiday. But it was one Thursday when Janardhan Swami was in deep meditation, and as usual, as Ek Nath was standing outside as a guard to give him the quiet and peace. Suddenly, the fort was attacked by the enemy. As they stormed, and the police outside got nervous, Ek Nath was able to see there was a pandemonium outside. And as soon as he saw that, saw the storming of the enemies on the fort, he made up his mind, rushed to the room where Guru had kept the weapons, the warrior clothes, put on the armor, including the helmet, and rode out in Guru's horse, on the Guru's horse, reassuring people. People thought that it was Guru who was coming out. He dashed out of the fort into the fray, routed the enemy without disturbing his Guru. And after having got rid of this enemy, quietly comes back, puts back the armor in the room again, all the weapons back in the appropriate place, and comes and stands in front of the door quietly. When Guru completed his meditation, got out of the samadhi, got out, he did not see any change, special thing on his face. Typically after an event like this, your face shows those emotions and excitement, what you have undergone just a few minutes ago, a few hours ago. He learned that from the soldiers, how he had come and protected them and make sure that the fortress remained in control. And he was very pleased with this young man's presence of mind, initiative taken by him, his courage, and most importantly, humility about not showing off that he's the one who took care of it. He was just amazed at this young man's capacity to do. At another time, what happened was he put him in charge of accounts. He would make sure everything was to the T. There was no confusion, there was no mistake, no errors. And one day, late in the evening, he continued to have challenges. The account just would not come out exactly the way he wanted it. He kept on working. Finally, around midnight, he found out a mistake of 1 naya paisa, Indian paisa. And I was so excited that he found the mistake and corrected it. He started dancing and clapping, and Guru got awake. Jagannath Swami got awake. Janardhan Swami got up and he said, what happened? Then he told him exactly why he was happy and jubilant. And Guru told him, you know what? If you maintain the same kind of concentration, you will really gain that spatial knowledge and truth that you're after. and realize what the difficulties and challenges of a sansari are and learn the art how to overcome it. Next day, Janardhan Swami took him along with him. That was on Friday then. Along the solitary spot in the mountains where, a little north of Devgarh, where he sat down for meditations frequently, and told this young boy, you know what? Nobody comes here except Lord Dattatreya. But he comes in whatever form he decides, he chooses to come in on that day. So don't get afraid, just be with me. Sure enough, after a little while, a filthy figure of a beggar-like person in tattered clothes appeared among the rocks. He was followed by a female dog. And as soon as he appeared, Janardhan Swami ran down. Both of them embraced each other. And this individual passed on his kamandalu to Janardhan Swami and said, go and milk that dog. He goes down, milks that dog, brings the milk and gives the vessel to that beggar. And both of them break a piece of bread and in that milk started eating it. This Ek Nath was looking at it, kind of, what's going on? I don't understand it. And after they had finished eating most of it, they called Ek Nath, actually the Tatra called Ek Nath, the beggar called him. And said, why don't you go and wash the pot in the running water there in the brook, in the stream there. So he takes that pot, goes there, washes it. And then Ek Nath started thinking, you know what? Guru had told me that the Tatra comes in any form. Maybe this beggar-like person indeed may be the Dattatreya. So he decided to take some water through that kamandalu himself. And as soon as he did that, Dattatreya gave him his own original appearance with 3 faces and then blessed him. And what had happened by that time, as that beggar had become Dattatreya, that female dog had become Kamadhenu, which fulfills all the wishes anybody can have at any time. God blessed him, and turning to Janardhan Swami, he said, you know what? You're very, very lucky that you have such an outstanding disciple with you. You may not know it, but he will, in his own time, help and save thousands of people in this world. After that episode where he had a privilege to see Sri Dattatreya in person, get the blessings from him, Guru ordered him, that Janardhan Swami ordered him, sit at this particular place and continue to do the penance till time I call you back. Sure enough, he sat down there, did not move, not even for food. And a nearby cowherd boy saw him meditating day after day, and what he started doing was, every day he will bring a large jug of milk, fresh milk, and leave it for him. After a few days, this boy came a little earlier than usual with the milk. And what he saw was something special and unique. What he saw was a king cobra coiled around Ek Nath's neck, and the entire cobra's hood on the top of the Ek Nath's head, and it's kind of dancing as typical cobras do. And this was sensed by Janardhan Swami by his extrasensory perception while back in the fort. And as soon as he saw what was going on, and the boy screamed, this young man, Ek Nath, got up. The cobra slithered away without hurting him or anybody else. And Guru, having seen this particular event, came and told Ek Nath to come back. After recalling Ek Nath, he said, Ek Nath, you've achieved all there is to learn in the spiritual life. Now I want you to join me on a pilgrimage around the country. I'll join you at least for a little while. So both of them leave, Ek Nath and Janardhan Swami, go to the banks of the river of Godavari and meet a Pandit called Chandrabodh. As soon as Janardhan Swami and Chandrabodh met, Chandrabodh Pandit invited both of them for lunch at his place. And just like the parents tell the children to do something special when the guests come or you go to somebody's place as a guest, Janardhan Swami told Ek Nath, why don't you sing the 4th chapter from Bhagavata? So he recited the 4th chapter from Bhagavata in classic Sanskrit with so much of feelings and emotions that the tears came to the eyes of Janardhan Swami and Chandrabodh. And then he was so pleased, he said, you know what? Janardhan Swami told him, you know what? I want you to translate this in Marathi so that everybody in the community can understand it and enjoy it. He had told him to do it sometime, but knowing Ek Nath's brilliance, he translated it in Marathi on the spot for them. And they were literally left speechless with admiration of this young man. Then they went on to Nasik and Trambakeshwar, Panchavati. And then Janardhan Swami returned back to the fort and said, you continue on for the pilgrimage, complete the whole India, and then I'll see you later. Meanwhile, what had happened was Ek Nath's grandparents were getting nervous. He had gone away for so many years. They were missing him. They were getting older. And even the Pandit who had left a few days later after Ek Nath had left came back after a few years at around this time. And he saw the condition of the grandparents, and then he remembered that Ek Nath had told him about what he had heard in the Shiva temple, and he guessed that he must have gone to Devgad. So he told the grandparents, I'll go and find out, search for him and see where he is. So he starts going towards Devgad and meets the Janardhan Swami. And Janardhan Swami, yes, he was here. And it was a wonderful man, boy. He had learned a lot. And he has gone on a pilgrimage, and I'm sure he's supposed to stop by in Paitan again. So at that time, you'll be able to see him. And then, just that what he had done was he gave him a letter to grandparents to assure them that he'll come back. Ek Nath will come back to Paitan. And also another letter for Ek Nath when he arrives there. So this Pandit came back and told the grandparents, relax, Ek Nath is on the way. It's a matter of time. And by this time, Ek Nath did arrive in Paitan. And he stayed in the same small Shiva temple. We had received the guidance from the inner sanctum a few years earlier. He was not quite sure he wanted to think about taking the sannyas, but he was waiting for his teacher to guide him in what direction he should go. And the news about Ek Nath coming back didn't take a long time to spread in the town of Paitan, small village then. And the grandparents came running down to the temple, saw him, embraced him, and said, "Oh, kya? Where have you been all these years? How we have searched for you. Why were you so angry with us? Now we will never, ever let you go." And then what the grandfather did was showed Ek Nath the letter from his teacher. And Ek Nath understood the Guru's wish, placed the letter on his own head, and that very spot he built a small hut and started living there, which he very could cook. And subsequently replaced it with a little better house. Then, having settled there according to his Guru's orders, that year he decided to celebrate Gokulashtami with a big festival with Nama Kirtan, singing his name of Vittal, Krishna. And he wanted to make sure that the sound of Krishna, Vittala, fills the entire air and surroundings on that particular day. He let everybody know that that's what's planning to do. And the news went to Devgad as well. And his teacher, Janardhan Swami, decided to come visit him at that time. He came down from Devgad to Paitan, and he met Lord Dattatreya there in Paitan, who was already watching over Ek Nath's shoulders to make sure everything was fine. He was fine. And as Janardhan Swami entered the temple, and Ek Nath heard that news, he came running down to greet him, put the dust of Guru's feet on his head, and typically prostrated with Sahtang Namaskar. Janardhan Swami was extremely pleased how his disciple Ek Nath had a beautiful and touching description of Shrikrishna's birth, which had enthralled the entire community. But he was really very, very happy and proud of this young man. As Janardhan Swami was about to return back to Devgad, the old grandparents of Ek Nath came running down and embraced the Guru's feet and begged, "Lord, you have shown him the path. Now we pray and beg you, please see that the dynasty of Bhanudas does not die away. He's only here. Kindly influence him so that he takes a wife." Janardhan Swami agreed and told Ek Nath, "Settle down as a householder, my son. If you lead a life of moderation, you'll indeed see Lord in all things, and you'll be able to dedicate your entire life to Lord Sri Krishna." Well, the most important occurrence in Ek Nath's life, in addition to so many things that we have shared so far, was he was able to find a perfect bride for him from Bijapur. Her name was Girjabai. She was the real asset in his life, and she really made his life complete. She had selfless devotion. She had absolute understanding and willingness to share hardships with a happy heart, but still maintaining a constant smile on her face. She was indeed a rare spouse, truly fit for a saint, Sant Ek Nath. They had a very long, happy married life of 42 years. When the grandparents passed away, Eknath, who was enlightened, did not grieve like typical individuals naturally do, but instead established an annual tradition to celebrate his guru's birthday and that special day that Lord Dattatreya gave him the darshan. And during those celebrations, the banks of Godavari River will really reverberate with name of Vittala, Shrikrishna, Govinda to an nth degree, and everybody in the community was happy and participated in those celebrations. And these celebrations went on every year. And then, as it happens, the number of people who attend those celebrations increase. And typically, as it is a custom during those celebrations, the lunches are provided, the dinners are provided after the kirtan at night. And of course, that is provided in the town, and Eknath took care of all those expenses. Eknath had a good helper. His name was Uddhava. And Uddhava will do all the scut work for him and make sure that all the necessary things were there to have the food for the community. But it doesn't come cheap. So you had to spend a lot of money, and he had a debt of almost 700 rupees. That doesn't sound much for people like us who live in the United States these days. But at that time in India, it was an enormous amount of money to carry that loan. And finally, the lender who had given that money to Uddhava gets angry and comes and talks with Eknath angrily. I know you take a name of Banduranga and celebrate all these things, but you should not be allowed to eat any food till the time you pay some money. Right from that day, Eknath and his wife stopped eating any food. And so did Uddhava. After a few days, Eknath did not get angry, did not get mad, but he said, that makes a lot of sense. I think I'm going to continue to fast. So one day what happened was Panduranga, Shrikrishna himself, took the appearance of Uddhava and goes at midnight to Saukar's place at that time. Knocks on the door. Saukar gets mad, says, why have you come so late to return the money? Can't it wait till tomorrow? But what about my master and his wife fasting? Okay. So grumpy landlord, Saukar, much against his will, got up, went out to open the shop, accepted the money, gave the receipt to Uddhava, and canceling the debt. Next day, that Saukar started feeling guilty of having caused trouble to this great saint like Eknath. He knew how wonderful, special human being he was. He went to Eknath, embraced his feet and said, forgive me, Santaji. Eknath said, no, I myself was at fault. I'll start eating as soon as we have paid all the debt in full. Landlord got confused. He turns to Uddhava and he said, what? Didn't you come last night to wake me up at midnight with the money? Uddhava said, certainly not. What Eknath did was opened to his account book, and there, neatly kept in between the pages, was a receipt of the Saukar that entire debt has been paid. Ek Nath closed his eyes and he knew that it was all the doings of Panduranga, and the tears came to his eyes. Seeing this, Saukar once again fell at his feet, asking for his forgiveness, and would not relent till Ek Nath gave him reassurance and a peace of mind. Here, God comes to his rescue without even asking for it. There's so many stories I could tell. I'll tell you this one now. There was a Muslim of Turkish descent who lived in that area. And of course, being a Muslim, he didn't like people who practice Hinduism. But of course, they ruled the area. And Muslim knew that Ek Nath is always respected by the community. And he watched him take a bath every day in the morning at the river before starting his prayers. So as he was returning back from the river after taking a bath, this Muslim spits on Ek Nath's face. Ek Nath doesn't get mad, goes back, takes a bath, comes back again, and the things go again and again and again and again. It almost happened 108 times. And then this Muslim guy started repenting. He said, "What have I done?" And said, "I'm very sorry. I should not have done it." But instead of getting angry with him, I said, "You know what? Oh, thank you. Otherwise, I would not have taken a bath 108 times. So thank you. Because of your actions, I was able to do it. So I thank you instead." Muslim said, "No, please teach me." He said, God is only one and the same. Whether you call him Panduranga, Vittala, Allah, or any other name that you want to choose. God stays in every individual, everything that you see. So you should live a life where you offend nobody and see the God in each and everybody. That Muslim touched his feet, thanked him for his advice, smiled and walked away. Well, here goes another story. I hope you're not getting bored. Well, there's a poor Brahmin, wanted to make sure that his son had a sacred thread ceremony. And but the Brahmins, they're arrogant, always want money most of the times. He said, "It's going to cost you 200 rupees to get perfectly performed puja by so many Brahmins." That poor man did not have that much money and didn't know how to get it. So Brahmins offered him, "What? We will do it for free if you succeed in getting Ek Nath angry." He doesn't get angry at all. He's respected by all. He had no other alternative. He wanted to get his son a sacred thread ceremony. So he said, "Okay, I'll try to do that." So he goes and bows down to Ek Nath, and Ek Nath says, "Come for lunch with me today. So, but go take a bath first, freshen up yourself, come home, and my wife will have lunch for both of us." Sure enough, this poor Brahmin goes to the Godavari, takes a bath, comes back, joins him for lunch. But of course, before that, they sit down for prayers and meditation. When Ek Nath is meditating, this rascal sits on his lap, trying to disturb him and make him angry. He did not. They sat down for lunch together, tried to say nonsense to him. He still didn't get mad and decided to play a stunt. What he did was, he jumped on the back of his wife, Giljabai, who was serving food to them. And Ek Nath was surprised. She could see the surprise on her face, and she was able to sense that Ek Nath was more worried about this man falling down and getting hurt than he jumping on his wife's back. So she started smiling and said, Hey, carrying the child on my back while working is not new to me, so don't worry about him. I'll take care of him, no problem. At that particular time, the Brahmin broke down and shared what Pandits had made him do to try to make him angry so that he'll be able to get his son a second, third ceremony. He does not have 200 rupees to pay for that. So Eknath turns to Uddhava. Uddhava, give him the 200 rupees. Let the boy have his second, third ceremony. So that young man had the second, third ceremony thanks to Eknath once again. You know, one of the unique thing about Eknath was he respected everyone. He had no feelings whatsoever to differentiate or discriminate based upon the caste, what language you spoke, what sex you were in, how young or old you were. One day, for his kirtanas, Ramu Mahar would come. And he requested, typically, as you know, when you respect somebody, you request them to come home and touch your house so that it will be blessed. So would you come to my place and kindly eat the food that my wife and myself will prepare for you? He treated everybody equally. He said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. So sure enough, he goes to his house the next day to partake the meal. All the Pandits and Shastris, so-called Brahmins, saw that he entered the house and started eating. They decided to excommunicate Eknath on the spot and started walking towards his house to sit there to tell him when he returns back from lunch at Mahar's place, Ramu Mahar. And what they saw instead on the way to Eknath's house was Eknath was sitting in person teaching the chapter of Bhagavata to the listeners as they were going back. So remember a moment ago, he was eating food at Ramu Mahar's, but no, he's speaking, talking to his devotees about Bhagavata. They're totally confused, but Eknath knew it was simply an act of Panduranga. The Pandits retreated back, thoroughly ashamed of their actions. I'll tell you one more story. Shrikrishna. Shrikrishna took a form of a servant to serve Eknath for 12 years. His name was Shrikrishna, except Eknath did not know that. He did all kinds of jobs for Eknath and Girjabai. And a saintly Brahmin, true devotee of Sri Krishna, came all the way from Dwarka to Eknath's home. Why? Because as he was praying to Lord Sri Krishna to get his darshan in Saguna Roop, instead of Sri Krishna, Rukmini came in his dream, Sri Krishna's wife. He said, he is not here these days. He is with Eknath in Paitan. So go, if you want to see him, go and see him there. He's working there as a servant of Eknath. His name is Shrikrishna. He was so excited that he came down to Paitan and started looking for Eknath's house. And the first person he ran into was indeed Shrikrishna, who was running hurriedly towards the river to bring some water for the prayers. He asked him, where does Eknath live? Sant Ek Nath live. He directed him to the correct house and went on to get the water. Then he went to Eknath's place. Eknath welcomed him with open arms, asked him who he was and why he has come, what he wanted. He said, I have come from Dwarka to have a darshan of God. Eknath smiled. God is everywhere. He's omnipresent. He lives through all and every creatures. Wherever you turn and look, there is only God. There are not many gods. There is not one God. There is only God. Please, this man turns to Eknath. He says, please don't take offense, my lord. But I know all that Vedantic stuff by heart, backwards and forwards. I'm fed up with it. But what I really want to see is Lord in the Saguna form. That's exactly why I came from all the way from Dwarka. Eknath started laughing. He said, but how do you expect to see him here? So this man says, haven't you got Shrikanta on the premises? Please send for him. Oh yeah. Shrikrishna just left to fetch some water. Then this Brahmin recollected that he was the very man that he had met coming to Eknath's home, who actually directed him to Eknath's house. Then he turned to Eknath with this significant look in his eyes. Do you know? Lord Shrikrishna is there himself as Shrikhanda. Eknath himself did not know. Hearing that, he called for Shrikhanda many times, but Shrikhanda did not show up. His wife Girija said, after placing the water vessels, he went into the puja room. Uddhava said he was just right here a moment ago, but Girija told exactly. He put the water here, then went to puja room. Eknath smiled and understood. He took this Brahmin with his hand to the worship room and prayed intensely for Panduranga. Kept on praying. After a little while, the room gradually lit with glowing effulgence. Light came in the form of Sri Krishna, overflowing with love and compassion, appeared in front of both of them. Eknath and Brahmin shed tears of joy, and God, having blessed them, returned back to the unseen form. The Brahmin thanked Eknath profusely and they returned back to Dwarka. I know it's tell you one more story, I can't stop. Born in the center of orthodoxy of Brahmin kingdom of Paitan, Eknath held to his moral principles and never made a difference between castes and practiced exactly what he preached. He said there's no difference on caste, color, sex, or age. God exists in all individuals, and we should behave exactly the same way, equally and respectfully. On his ancestor Shraddha day, Eknath was to entertain Brahmins for lunch at home, as usual. His wife Gujabai got up early, took a bath, cleaned the house, put rangoli, and then started cooking food with the help of Uddhava and Shrikanda. Wonderful aroma of that tasty food was smelled. Everybody, every passers-by on the road, and some of these passers-by were Brahmins in the neighborhood and Mahars working in the community. And one of the Mahars says, Mahar is one of the untouchable castes. Smells really good. The other one said, such food is not for people like us. Just move on. Eknath heard those words and asked Girjabai, you know what? Some Mahas were going by here and they expressed the desire maybe they should eat your food, taste, smells so good. Should we offer them food and then you can cook once again separately for Brahmins to come later? Girjabai, as usual in her loving voice, she said, of course there's no difficulty at all. Have I ever refused anything for you? You know, whatever you say is always right. And Eknath said Uddhava to invite all the Mahars of the town for that special feast. All these Mahars came, enjoyed immensely the tasty meals on plantain leaves, neatly spread on freshly washed floor and decorated with fresh rangoli. What Eknath was seeing and looking at this Mahar's face was God and each and every guest who was enjoying that food was absolutely delighted that God was eating. When all these Mahars went left, what Girija did was got the floor washed again, spread a new rangoli, went to have another bath, and after taking the bath, started cooking all over again. Once again prepared wonderful feast for the incoming Brahmins. Not a surprise, not a single Brahmin made an appearance because they had seen Mahas enter his house and having food. Because they didn't show up, Uddhava went to invite them, remind them of the feast, and he instead met with the curses. Is this Bhanusas, his great grandson, whose life seems to have no other purpose than destroying the Brahmin dharma? When Eknath went in person, then when Uddhava got back without they coming with him, Eknath decided to go in person to request them, and he said, "The first food was prepared for you, but the Mahas smelt it. So according to your ideas and principles, became impure. I decided to give that food to them. After that, we took bath, washed, purified the place, cooked a fresh meal for you. Please come and enjoy the food of the Shraddha." These Brahmins, "Oh yeah, you're so very well learned. Go, feed your ancestors. We won't have such a food served after Mahas have eaten first. So go now, let your ancestor eat it and enjoy it." Shikanda, who was accompanied Eknath, stepped forward and told the Brahmins, "Yes, indeed, the ancestors will indeed come and enjoy the food. You don't need to." Then he took Eknath by hand, led him indoors, and there instantly Eknath's face lit up with joy at the wonderful sight he saw. What he saw was on that polished floor sat all his ancestors all the way back up to Bhanudas as his guest for that day. Eknath closed his eyes, prayed to Lord Panduranga, and bowing to these ancestors, he began to serve each and every one of them. The obstinate Brahmins who had refused to come for lunch observed it from the door, absolutely ashamed, and kept silence, and admired at Eknath's principles and values, which they had missed completely with their limited intellect and understanding. I got to tell you one more story to conclude. One day at night, for no reason, Eknath just was not feeling good. He felt something was in his back and his throat. Throat started swelling, unusual pain. That night he dreamt that the young Saint Jnaneshwar, who had taken Mahasamadhi about 300 years earlier at Alandi in a cave, which was sealed over him, came in his dream and complained, a root of Anjana tree nearby is choking him. Could you come and remove it for me, please? Eknath immediately, with the help of Uddhava by his side, proceeded towards Alandi to the beat of mridangams and cymbals, jhanjani, dhol, singing kirtans all the way. After singling out the particular Anjana tree where Dhaneshwar lay in Samadhi, he finally succeeded opening that massive stone slab and slipped into the opening. He found out there the subtle form of Santa Jnaneshwar, illuminating with his own effulgence, while a sweet aroma pervaded that small cave. He bowed down to the scent, removed the root, and Jnaneshwar spoke to him affectionately. Nathya, the root was only an excuse to call you here. In these last 300 years, my Bhavarta Deepika has become corrupted, and a lot of misrepresentations and interpolations have changed its appearance completely. What I want you to do is make sure that you correct the Bhavarta Deepika and bring it to the original form and exactly the way I intend it to be. They stayed together in the cave for 3 days, discussing, conversing, and Ek Nath really felt blessed by the company and wisdom from Sant Jnaneshwar. He gently finally placed his head on the feet of Sant Jnaneshwar 3 days later, extricated himself out of the cave, came back to his followers who were still singing bhajans and kirtans outside. Then all of them went to Padarpur temple and returned back to Paitan. It took almost 1 full year for Ek Nath to sort out Jnaneshwari, clearing out the unwelcome additions or omissions and bringing the Bhavarta Deepika to its original magnificent form. In summary, Sant Ek Nath was a learned, enlightened social reformer, disciplined householder, blessed with a supportive wife, Girjabai, who made him truly complete. He respected everyone and set an example to treat everyone with equal respect. He was an amazing poet, had a very sweet voice. He had a commanding presence, and no one ever wanted to leave his kirtans and bhajans and discourses, just the way the things happened when Sant Jnaneshwar was discussing Bhavarta Deepika in that small Shiva temple. In addition to that, Ek Nath had a exemplary humility and amazing generosity. In short, he was a true devotee, a saint in absolute terms. Thank you.